I got a tune, folks. That'd probably be helpful. So come on in. I am Doctor McFarland, and today is Tuesday, and that means we're going to talk about gear. And I have some very important decisions to make very soon. Otherwise, I will run out of money or something like that. I'm going to try to keep these live streams to an hour because I feel like if someone's coming along and they see a video that's like an hour and a half long, do they really want to stick around and watch the whole thing? Probably not. But if I kept it, 45 minutes to an hour, that should be well within someone's threshold to like sit down, maybe after dinner, watch a video that's live, or listen to a podcast or whatever. And after I get a few of these under the belt, I can definitely go back and edit them down to audio and put them in podcast form if that's something that would be helpful to you. So come on in. We're going to be talking about captures versus profiles versus modeling and what that even means. And what does it mean for you when you're looking to buy something for your guitar rig setup? Maybe you're playing at church and you have to have a silent stage and there's no room to have, amps in a separate room with that are mic'd up and they're going to the front of the house. Maybe your church doesn't have that option. So, you might need to have a pedal board with either a small device at the end of your chain that acts as your amp and your cab. I'm going to make sure I don't puff into the mic here. And seeing what this message is. It's probably nothing. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, you have to have an amp and a cab somewhere in there. Otherwise, it's like I'm taking my guitar. This is a Chapman ML3 Pro traditional. It's like you're taking a guitar and you're just plugging it straight into the input of a channel on your mixing board. There's no preamp sound. The power amp section that you're getting is actually coming from the speakers. Well, if they're passive speakers, then there's a power amp somewhere in there. But there's no guitar sound. There's no guitar frequencies going on that makes it sound like a guitar. It's just all plunky and sounds like crap, really. Let me go to a new... Hello. This is what the sound of a guitar plugged into just a normal preamp sounds like, okay? It's just not very inspiring at all. Now, there's probably, I think, Easy Like Sunday Morning by Lionel Richie. It might be the Commodores. That might have been a solo single from him. I can't remember. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that guitar solo was recorded plugged straight into maybe like a Neve or an SSL or whatever mixing console they had. They just plugged it straight in and they dimed the preamp so it got all distorted. And that's the sound of the guitar. But that's not normally what we're used to listening to when we hear songs either on a CD or on Spotify or on the radio. We hear a guitar going through an amp that has been mic'd with a microphone. That could be a mic like this. It could be all kinds of mics. Ribbon mic, condenser mic. And now that signal chain of guitar going into amp, going into speaker cab, whether that's a combo amp or just a separate cab, like a head and a cab kind of situation. and that's, mic'd with a microphone, and then that goes into your recording console, or nowadays into your interface, and now that is recorded into a DAW, or a digital audio workstation. So trying to recreate that sound of a guitar signal path, there's actually a few different options nowadays. So let's talk about those different options. And I have a few examples over here at my disposal. You're not going to be able to see this because I don't have a separate camera. I guess I could have a separate camera. I just don't. I have a Kemper right on top of my little rack unit over here. Okay. And we're just talking tonight. We're not going to go all out and go crazy. But if you are watching, be sure to leave a comment in the comment section and let me know what guitar rig that you have, whether it's a mauler. And we'll talk about the different mauling categories, or you could have a capture device like the Quad Cortex, or you could have a profiler like the Kemper. So the Kemper over here is they call it profiling, but it is essentially an amp, whether that's a combo amp or a head and cab, being mic'd with a microphone, and then that's going through a preamp. And some people like using an API or a Neve, or something really that juices up the signal. And then that sound is being captured in a device called a Kemper. Now, what's interesting about profiling is once you are done with that process, you really can't go and turn a knob on the amp, maybe like the treble or the mids, for instance, on an amplifier. Some amps don't have mid-range, or a mids knob, but you get the gist. You just can't go over to an amp and now turn a knob and change the sound. You're kind of capturing the sound as it was right at that moment, whether that's a clean sound, edge of breakup, full-on gain, dimed all the way to 10 kind of sound, and that is one profile. Now, if you want a different sound, you can go to the amp, you can turn some knobs, and now do the profile process again, and that gives you your second sound. So maybe the first one you had more of a clean setup, and then the second one you went a little dirtier, maybe a little higher gain, maybe you cut the bass and boosted the treble, or something like to that effect. And that is the sound of your second one. Now you go on to your third process, and let's say we crank the gain all the way up on the amp. We really sculpt and shape the EQ of the amplifier to get the final sound that we want. You might move the microphone a little bit around the speaker because you find when you crank the amp, you get way too much bass response. You might want to move the amp or the mic closer to the cap or the cap edge, somewhere where it's a little bit brighter on the speaker itself. And that is what you're getting when you're profiling a guitar rig. Now, if you buy a Kemper pack of any kind, whether that's Tone Junkie, Michael Britt, I've actually discovered a guy named Bert Miladish. I don't know what his name. I can't even spell his last name, much less pronounce it. But he makes excellent Kemper profiles, and they sound really, really good. There's very, very little tweaking that you have to do, because honestly, you shouldn't have to tweak at all. If they captured it correctly, then the sound should be great. You shouldn't have to do a whole lot of stuff. Now, with the Kemper, there are other parameters in there called definition, clarity. Since they can't go in and actually turn knobs on an amp to change your sound, they give you other parameters. Like I said, different definition, clarity, all kinds of different stuff. Let me turn this on. It's actually unplugged, but that's fine. So you can still shape the sound after the fact. But the whole point and the whole idea is we're capturing a moment, really a sound snapshot in time, and that's the sound you get. There's some positives and there's some pros and cons to that. But the next item over here is a quad cortex. And what the quad cortex is doing is essentially profiling. But they can't call it profiling because now you're just copying what the Kemper does. And we now have captures, or we're capturing a sound in time, a moment in time. So same exact thing, really. There's no different about the process. You set up your amp exactly how you want. You put your microphone exactly where you want it. And now you are capturing that sound in the quad cortex. I have a capture. Let me bring up a capture real fast here. And I'm sorry that you're not seeing what I'm doing, but I'll do individual video, like smaller short tutorial videos on like the layout and how you go about doing this kind of stuff. But let me just choose something. All right, here's a US Print 65. Okay, but I need a cab in there because a guitar sound without a cabinet is going to sound like a swarm of bees. Have you ever heard that term, swarm of bees? It just sounds very buzzy. Especially when you get a really high gain sound in there. I'm going to go for a greenback something. And now there isn't a swarm of bees. They've all flown away. So okay, so that sounds pretty good. Now, my parameters for this is gain, bass, middle, treble, and volume. So at face value, that would sound like, well, that's kind of the knobs I would have on a Princeton reverb or some kind of Fender amp anyway, right? Well, it is, but if I crank the gain up here, it goes from 24 dB down to 24 dB up. And it's really not the same as cranking the volume on the amplifier because you've already captured the amp. I think they're trying to simulate how a rig that is captured, what would happen if you now turn the gain up? Like, what would that do to the sound? It's just kind of strange. It's like, is that what a US Print 65 sound? It's probably like a blackface 65 blackface Princeton. Like, is that the exact sound of what it would sound like cranked up? Or is the gain, bass, middle, treble, volume all at zero? That's the sound of what they captured right at that moment. Now, there are lots of different captures for this US Print. So I can go, that's number one. If I go number two, notice it got a lot louder. Okay. If I go to number three, okay, notice that the gain just keeps getting higher. So once again, we're taking little snapshots in time and we're calling those captures. But the Kemper calls them profiles. So here's number four. Now, I've got the tune one more time. And I'm using something about these pickups getting around electronics. They like to pick up weird sounds. Tuning. I was on the Quad Cortex Facebook group today, and someone was like, the tuner sucks. It's really bad. It's like, well, it's not a strobe tuner, but it's not horrible either. I mean, it's just, there's a dot, and once you get it in the middle, it turns green, and that lets you know that you're in tune. So people just like to complain about all kinds of stuff. But here is number 4. Okay, now if I go back to 1, so it's not very loud, is it? Now I feel like I can turn the volume up, and it's just like a linear fader. You can push up and down. Okay, that sounds pretty good. All right, so let's say that sounds pretty good to me, right? That can be my clean sound. Now I'm going to go in, add, just imagine I'm touching the screen right now, because I am. It's very similar to the head rush. You just touch the screen and add in whatever stuff you want. I'm going to do a stereo spring reverb. Now, effects, like reverb delay, that is something that a profile and a capture cannot harness in the sound. It's only the dry. It's only able to capture dry stuff, not delays and reverbs and whatever else. I actually didn't like that, but what's cool is I can turn this little top switch, and it allows me to cycle through all the different options. So, and once again, I'll do individual videos on a lot of the aspects on the Kemper Quad Cortex. I have a Fractal AX8 over here that, my gosh, it sounds really good, but also it is very difficult to use. And plus, the things I'm so used to with the head rush and now the Kemper and the Helix and other things is fractal stuff. One, is really hard. Even with an editor, you have to kind of wrap your mind around different things. And they have scenes, and they have controllers, switches, and all kinds of weird stuff. But it just doesn't easily do what I prefer to do most of the time. So, strange, I know. That's a nice reverb. Take the mix of it down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And we'll call this US Prince. And you can't see what I'm doing, but it's fine. All right. So I've essentially made a guitar rig out of a capture that Neural DSP, the team, whoever did all these, they set up the amp, they mic'd the cabinet, the speaker, they captured the sound. And now I can play through that iteration, actually a few different iterations of what they've created. So it's kind of cool. Now, unlike the Kemper, where it can only have profiles, it doesn't have stock amps and cabs per se. The Quad Cortex can kind of do both. They provide captures that were made by other people, or if you have your own amplifier, whether that's a Boss Katana, why would you want to capture a Boss Katana? But I mean, why not? Boss Katana sound good. If you want to capture the sound of a Boss Katana, you can totally do that. If you have a plug-in that you really like using on your computer, I have a few of them here. I have the Amplitude 5. I have an S-Gear. I have a Bias Effects something. I think Bias Effects 2, whatever that is. I feel like something. Oh, that was from the last one. That was from the last live stream. Okay. So, 2 people watching so far. Let me know who you are and what kind of guitar setup that you have. Okay. And if you don't want to say hi or ask a question, then that's fine too. I'm just here talking because it's Tuesday and I'm talking about gear. Talk about gear. Now, if I make a new, that's another thing we can go into. Different companies call what some would call it a preset, others call rigs. I mean, they're really interchangeable terms. There's also a concept called scenes versus snapshots. And scene, I mean, that is essentially a preset within a preset. And that allows you to, have a tube screamer on at one moment. And then you hit another scene. And maybe the tube screamer turns off, but then a delay turns on. And a reverb turns on, and maybe a flanger turns on. So it's a way to have all the elements you want within that preset or rig. But then within that preset or rig, you can switch and you can have different combinations of your effects in there, which is kind of neat. Kemper has morphing, which is a way to keep all the same effects that are in your chain, but you can change whatever parameters that you want on those effects. So, for instance, if you have a basic reverb on your first rig over here, okay, and now you hit the rig the second time, it goes into the morph mode, and now maybe that same reverb has tons of decay and maybe it has like a shimmer type sound if the reverb has that in there inherently. And so that's what the Kemper can do. It can do morphing, which is really cool. Quad Cortex has scenes, and I'm going to add in a few things here. I'm going to add an amp, and I'm actually going to go to let's go to like the same little Princeton amp that we had on the capture. And US prints, yeah, we'll do that one. And we'll add in a cab. Now, since it's a Princeton, it's probably using some kind of 10-inch speaker. So US print C10R, it's probably like a Jensen speaker or something to that effect. So here's the Princeton and cab. Now this is a model, okay? Mark in the Mix is saying howdy. This is a fun topic, and it's something that I try not to lose sleep over, but I do have all the major modelers right now. I have the Kemper, the Quad Cortex, a Fractal AX8, which I know is an older unit because most people want the FM9 or the FM3 or AXFX3 or whatever. But to me, like all the Fractal amps I've tried on the AX8 sound great. So they should be fairly on par with the newer Fractal stuff. I have a Helix. I have all 3 headrush units. I have a little Boss MS3, which doesn't have amps, but it has great effects. And I also I had the HX Stomp, but I sold that when I got the full size Helix floor. And I have a lot of plugins. Also, I have a Blue Guitar Amp 1, which is not a profiler or a capture unit or a modeler. It's an analog amp that does some cool magic circuitry inside the guts. So, then I have that paired up with the HX Effects from line 6. So a real amp and an HX Effects on a small pedal board It sounds really good. So yeah, this is the sound of a model of a Princeton reverb on the quad cortex. Okay, sounds pretty good. It has good low end, especially for a 10-inch speaker. And unlike the capture, where it gave us a volume, it gave us a bass, middle, treble, and output, or whatever it was called. I think it was called gain. I can't remember what it was called. I have to go back and look at it. But this one only gives us treble and bass, because this is what the actual amp has. It only has a treble and a bass and a volume and an output. And really the output is not even included on the amp. The output is something linear that that a digital unit will give you, so you can kind of gain stage between your different presets. Maybe you're using a Princeton reverb on one preset, and then on the next one you're going to a Mezzo Boogie dual rec of some sort, and you need a way to level those two out, so when you go from one to the next, you get roughly the same volume. So for some reason I'm getting a little, not sure what's going on now. I'm hearing some clipping. I don't know what that is. Sometimes I go back and listen to I rewatch my live streams. And what I think I'm hearing in the moment actually sounds way better when I go back and listen to it. So it's probably just me hearing weird stuff. But okay. And let's go in and add a reverb. And then we'll go back and switch between the different presets, so you can kind of hear. What did I have? I think I had a hall or something, maybe. Okay. Let's save this one. So this is going to be called Prince Model. All right, and I'm going to put it in preset mode. All right, so here's the capture. And here is the model. Okay, it does sound a little bit different. Back to the capture. So that sounds more in your face, does it not? Now, I know I'm using headphones, and it's not like I have an amp right beside my leg, blowing air, blowing wind against my leg here, but smoothing air. But that feels like it's real, right? Versus the model. Now, within certain contexts, they both sound good. But that sounds really in your face. That's just a clean option right there. I do have a fractal. I have a fractal right behind me. Let me grab that real fast. All right, now this bad boy. This is a heavy beast right here. This thing is the Fractal AX8. Okay, and what's cool about it is it's simply a modeler. It doesn't do profiling or capturing or any of those things. It models amplifiers And I think it does it really, really, really stinking well. Whether I'm listening to headphones or studio monitors, or maybe I'm using the FRFR speaker, or I could be using the power amp in or effects return of an amplifier, like a tube amp or even a solid state amp. These preamp models, these sound really good. The problem is you got all these different knobs and switches, and it's very, very hard to navigate. Even with an editor, you kind of have to learn how to use the editor kind of thing. What's going on here? And it doesn't have auto swell. You can take a volume block and you can make it into a swell effect. But man, it's really hard. I mean, you got to really know your way around this unit to even make that work. It can do spillover between scenes. And I watched a video earlier today by Leon Todd. I think he's Aussie. I think he's Australian or something maybe. He's really cool. Great hair. I don't have no hair, but he has great hair. He's got a lot of great videos on fractal stuff and whatever, but I think he was showing how you can get spillover between scenes and presets, but he was doing the preset portion of it for the XFX3 and not necessarily AX8. So I tried it on the AX8 and it didn't spill over like I was hoping it would. So you're essentially left with making a preset that, mind you, it can only have one reverb block, which usually isn't horrible. But if I'm going to have an always on reverb, and then I want it to, hit a switch and maybe going to a really long ambient kind of reverb, I kind of want two different reverbs for that. And I know the Kemper only has so many slots to add in effects. You got 4 before the amp and 4 after the amp, but you can still add multiple reverbs if you really need to. You can use one of those slots to have reverb 1 and then reverb 2. Well, on XFX, you can only add, AX8, you can only add one reverb block in a preset, and that's it. And there is XY switching, which means you could have on the X, you could have a short reverb, and then on the Y state of that switch, you can have a longer reverb. But when you go from the long back to the short, it's not like the long just keeps carrying over and then it slowly morphs back into the short. It's just very abrupt sounding, and I just don't like that at all. So what I may be doing is I'm going to practice using the Kemper and the Quad Cortex, and I'm going to capture and I'm going to profile amp sounds from the Fractal. I know it's not a real amp, but these amps, these models sound so good that I feel like I'm actually capturing or profiling the actual amp itself. So I'm going to be using this unit in some videos coming up. If not this week, very, very soon. I'll probably build up a few short videos and then release them over the next month or so. One, so I can just learn the capturing or profiling process. And then 2, since I have this at my disposal, I can basically say, all right, I really like the AC, like the Morgan AC20, for instance. It's just a really good sounding amp in real life and also on the Fractal. I can take a capture of that amp and I can turn the dials, make a capture, turn them again, have a second capture, turn them a third time, have a third capture, and so on and so forth. So I can basically get different iterations of whatever settings I want. And what's also cool about all this stuff, let me put this down. We have the inclusion of pedals, right? So we have, these are all Wampler pedals, but I'm sure if you're a guitar player, you already have a small collection of 100 or so pedals at your disposal. But this is a Moxie, which is a tube screamer, a modified tube screamer. There's a lot of different options in there, which is cool. There's a Wampler Ratsbane, which is a rat pedal. We have the Wampler Tumnus, which is a clone of some sort. And then we have the Wampler Bell, which is a ODR, Noble's or ODR pedal. That's another video I'm going to do very soon, is plug the Bell into the Quad Cortex, and I can also capture the sound of pedals, not only amps but pedals as well. So it should be pretty fun to capture a pedal and then test it out against the model of the same pedal. So this is a capture of the same capture of the US Princeton. See, that sounds pretty good, right? Now I'm going to go in and go to overdrive, guitar, and I'm going to use this knob over here to go between my different stuff. All right, so theirs is called the Nobel OD1. And it sounds like this. Kind of turn the gain down a little bit. Okay, sounds pretty good. Maybe raise the level. You always want to make sure you A/B the sound of the pedal on versus off, and make sure you get the volume matched fairly well. And once again, you're not seeing what I'm doing, but this is very good ear training to know how to recognize. I'm going to do some short videos on like some mystery guitar setups. I'm not going to tell you what they are at all, but I'm going to just simply play, and you as the viewer are going to tell me in the comments or wherever, that sounds like a Fender amp, that sounds like a Marshall type thing, because I think a lot of the, I mean, to me, this is my own personal opinion, a lot of this stuff, like you have to get the exact sound of, a certain amp. And I understand that. That's perfectly fine. But at a certain point, I like to break it all down to categories of sounds and not try to get exact sounds, if that makes any sense. So, talk about a clean category, right? This would be considered, let me go to my stomp view. There we go. So this would be considered a clean sound, right? If I turn my volume up. Okay, it's pretty clean. Now, if I brought in a Marshall amp, I could probably get a very similar sound to that clean sound. Probably wouldn't sound that much different. Now, there might be certain aspects of it that might have more mid-range, all kinds of frequency adjustment options there. But at the end of the day, it is a clean sound. If you're looking for, and this all depends on whether you're on the bridge pickup, middle position, or the neck position as well. So, So your bridge position is always going to have more gain and be a brighter sound versus the neck pickup. So it's not as bright, a little bit warmer sounding, a little fatter in the low end. So with the Nobles back on, now, I don't know about you, but as long as I have a clean sound, some kind of edge or breakup sound, whether that's from a pedal or just cranking the amp, using a different profile, using a different model, whatever you got to do to get that early breakup kind of sound, and then have a higher gain lead tone. I mean, that pretty much covers the bases that I need, and I'm sure a lot of what you need as well, right? Think about whether you're in a cover band or you're doing your own original tunes. Usually, I mean, let's just go out with like a typical rock song, right? Maybe your rock song is driving really hard in the intro of the song, right? So we're going volume up. Okay, but then the intro's over and we're going to a verse. We got a nice singer singing some lyrics. Maybe we add in some modulation. I like some tremolo sometimes. So here's some tremolo. Here's the pre-chorus. So then we got tremolo off. Let me add in another drive here just to simulate like something nice and chunky. This is actually the Freeman BEOD, which my pickups don't like because it's very noisy. This is the chorus. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And maybe the turnaround now kind of stays big. All right, now that pedal turns off and we're back to our clean sound. La 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 la. The band's kind of kicking in. Then we got the first overdrive pedal back on. And then we got the chorus again, which is this. Okay, maybe you go to a solo after that. I mean, all kinds of different options here. But if you think about the music that you're actually playing on a night-to-night basis, gig-to-gig basis, these are the categories that you play in. You live in these categories. You live in the clean category. You could add in, you can sprinkle things on top of there like phase, flange, tremolo, chorus. Maybe you got like an 80s. Let me add in a chorus sound real fast, right? Something like this. So. something that gives your clean tone a little flavor, if you will. Let me check my time because I don't want to go over an hour. We're good. I told myself and my wife I would only do like an hour of these shows. Because I think more than that people just won't watch. I want you to watch. So yeah, we got some chorus going on. You could have some tremolo, some fade, some flan, whatever you want on your clean sound category, right? And then we have the edge of breakup, kind of low gain type stuff. I can turn the drive knob down on the nobles to get more of a cleaner. Okay, pretty good. Here's the middle position. We could also have some delay in there. I don't have any delay yet. Why not? What is my problem? I gotta have delay. Okay, I'm gonna move this down here somewhere. Yeah, there we go. So now we got some verse 2. You kind of want to change up your sections, right? So we're going back to a drive sound, but now we're gonna add some delay in there. Maybe the snare's like ramping up and the drums are getting bigger, Okay. Stuff like that. So edge of breakup. Maybe you want to sprinkle in some delay, some other reverb sounds, rotary speaker, all kinds of stuff. And then usually for your heavy, like, good crunch, good lead sounds. You just want a good high gain sound, right? Something it starts where the crunch sound leaves off, but then it takes it to the next level. And to me, I think that's where the BOD kind of comes in. Right? Any kind of craziness. And I don't know if you ever do this or not, but if you listen to high gain sounds, there's going to be some nuances in there, but they really start sounding the same after a while. So whether you're choosing a Bogner Ecstasy or a Mesa Boogie Mark V or a Mark II, like, some of the early like Metallica style amps, JCM 800s, JCM 900s. We got the lead, the super lead type stuff. Slow one, SLO 100s. All the amps they do have a distinct sound. Don't get me wrong, but really in a mix, nobody cares. This is my personal opinion. It doesn't really matter. A high gain sound is going to be a high gain sound, whether you get that from a Marshall, an SLO, Mesa Boogie, PV, 6505, 5150s. My gosh. If you put them in a mix, you might have someone that with a really keen ear that says, yeah, that's definitely a 5150 right there. I can just tell, right? Or it's a Saldano, whatever. This would be very, very bold to do. But what if maulers and profilers and whatever, what if they just came with generic amps that were in those three categories? What if they gave you a clean amp, they gave you enough controls to kind of, get some differentiation in the mid-range, whatever. They gave you a crunch amp that gave you, some differentiation in the mid-range. And then there's a lead that just gives you a good lead sound. What if? What if that's all they gave you? And what if it didn't matter if it was called 65 or 50, 5150 or a slow 100 or a dual rack or whatever? Does that make any sense? Mark is chiming in here. I'm just kind of hello. What's going on with my mouse? There we are. So Mark is saying, I look forward to more. I trust that all these units are good. I happen to be a Kemper user. Kemper is going to have to offer an update looking unit. So Mark, you're saying that the Kemper needs to look better or something? I mean, they did come out with the Kemper stage not long ago, and that's what I have. I have the Kemper stage. Let me put down my guitar, and you can see this thing here. Oh, now this thing is not heavy at all. It's not heavy at all. This is the Kemper stage. Yeah, and Aaron Short, he's like, I can't beat the real thing, but I don't want to carry the real thing to a gig, so therefore I have a Kemper stage. So that's just what you do. I love playing my Supro Delta King 12. It's a great little tube amp. It actually sounds really big. It sounds really good. But that's what all these units are trying to capture is, I see I use the word capture because that's what the Cod Quartet uses. But we're all trying to harness the sound of a real amp, but in something that is convenient and small, and it has all the built-in effects that we need, and whatever else. So, but yeah, I'm kind of I'm of the opinion that I would be perfectly fine not defining. I would be perfectly fine not defining what the actual names. See, this is why they also changed the names of their real thing to protect the innocent. It might be called a US Prince, but we all know it's a Fender Princeton reverb amp. We just know what it is, right? But they have to, because of copyrights and intellectual property, they have to change the names of the models to do all that. So with that said, let me grab something here. All right, headphones back on. All right, so something that Thomas Blug has done, and he has videos to back this up, by the way, is he hasn't modeled or captured or profiled anything. He's taken the actual circuits of these original amps, whether that's a Marshall or a Fender or a Vox or whatever else, and he's made it to where you can get pretty much in the ballpark of those tones with something like a Blue Guitar Amp 1. Okay? Now, you're not going to be able to see these names very well, but let me get it really close to the camera. Okay? See that? We got modern, classic, vintage, and clean. Okay? So, what is cool about having this naming limitation is there's actually there's some switches on the side here. Let me get a little closer. See that? Yeah. There's switches on the side that allows you to kind of shape the sound a little bit. So on the clean channel, you can I should probably just plug this in, but I'll do it on a different video. because we're just talking. So on the clean channel, you can go from like really bright, really sparkly highs, kind of darker kind of tones. So that gives you, Marshally, Voxy, Fendery kind of tones, right? And then on the vintage channel, that gives you more of your JMPs and your JT45 kind of Marshall tones. And then classic is like your Marshall JCM 800-ish, kind of realm. And then modern is like your Dual-Rex and your Ingalls and your Diesels and all the different stuff, right? Slow 100s. Super Lead Overdrive, SLOs. So what's cool about this is actually a 100-watt amplifier. It has an 8-ohm and a 16-ohm speaker out here on the back. It does have a record out that gives you a simulated cab kind of sound. I'm going to check this cable real fast. Hopefully it's still good. Yeah, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good overall. Don't want to tug on that cable too much. I might have to resolder it eventually. But what I'm using the amp with is the HX Effects from line 6, and that gives me all my overdrives, delays, reverbs, whatever I want. But I get the advantage of using a real analog amplifier, and it does not have a preamp tube in it. So some would say it's like a solid state kind of sound. But essentially, Thomas Blug has dialed in the preamp section to respond like a 12AX7 is actually there in the circuit, even though it's not. But we do have a mini Russian tube in the power amp section. So even though it has a solid state power amp, it's a Class D power amp to get you your volume. The power amp stage is actually going through that tube and is giving you the warmth and the response of what a tube amp, a traditional tube amp gives you. So this is a real amp. It's no modeling. It's not profiling. It's not capturing. It's not doing any of that stuff. And another good example is the Boss Katana. It gives you a clean. It gives you a crunch. It gives you a lead, and it gives you a brown category. And actually, on the Mark II version, it gives you a button that you can get 2 different tonalities out of each category. So at a certain point, I like just the categorical naming. So that way you're not caught up. It's like, I can't play guitar unless I have a diesel VH4 amplifier. Well, what if something that was called modern or called lead or just something called generic, what if it got you that sound, within, 1%, and it was close enough? Maybe it was just good enough, Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments. Let's see what Mark and the boys have to say here. Obviously, Aaron is a big Kemper fan, which I like Kemper. It's great. Mark in the mix says, it seems that the community thinks that the stage is a 10-year-old unit, even though it's fairly new. Well, they're basing that off of the toaster, the Kemper toaster. And really, I think they're thinking about the entire technology as a whole. It's like the technology to profile something is, 10 plus years old. But, this thing has Wi-Fi in it. It has Bluetooth. It has all kinds. It doesn't have Bluetooth, or does it? I can't remember. But it has modern functionality that it still sounds good. Is very similar to a unit that it's kind of like this AX8. Yeah, there's firmware updates for it and whatnot, but they're not making this thing anymore, right? This is technically discontinued because the FM series came out, FM3, FM9, and all that. And but just because it's discontinued and it's old technology doesn't mean it didn't sound bad. If they're never going to update this thing ever again. But as long as something strange, like electronically, happens to it, doesn't happen to it, it's still going to sound just as good today as it will in 20 years. So, like I kind of said at the beginning of this live stream, I kind of have some decisions to make. I have to sell off some stuff because I don't have the money to keep all this stuff around. It'd be great if I did, but I just don't. And but the thing is, all of these units sound amazing. So it's just going to really come down to which units or which unit, if I just keep one. If I only had to choose one, what would it be? Which unit gives me the sound that I want, is fun to use, and is very easy to use. It's easy to get around. So far, the Kemper is very easy to get around, and I've made a few performances based on the Burt M packs that I got, and also some Tone Junkie stuff. And they all sound great. So I'd be very happy using any of those performances on any recording, any live gig. I only play at church. I don't play out. So that's my weekly gig, is playing at church. The only gigging I do nowadays. Quad Cortex. It's small, lightweight. I feel like the switches are too close together. But some people say, hey, it takes practice to kind of get a feel for all that. And they are coming out with a new update very soon that hopefully introduces hybrid mode and some other cool stuff. Mark is saying, yeah, they refer to the technology. I have a friend that's now bought all three, with the QC being the latest purchase. He refers to it as a modern day Kemper. And he's like, I'm like, what? Yeah. Aaron's saying people say Kemper is old and we shouldn't buy it, but the QC has no editor. The Kemper has an iOS app. So there you go. Aaron, what's going on with my mouse? There we go. Aaron is asking how the Laney FR is, and I did a short review on that about 2 years ago. But for me, it was too heavy, and it just the cost of it was not what I wanted to spend at that time, so I actually returned it to Zounds. And this is really cool. So this is something to think about. Really, the Kemper, when it first came out, all these studio guys, I've just gone over an hour, so I'll shut it down here in a little bit. But the studio guys, they're like, I have all these amazing amps, but I want to be able to record with them, but also take them on tour. And the Kemper really provided that option for the studio guys, because they can record with their Princeton reverbs and their Marshall JTM 45s and their Mezza Boogies and whatever else. But then they can capture those amps and, build performances with the effects that they need for each song. And now they have this really small unit they can throw in a backpack or a gig bag and plop it down on stage and get really I'm not going to say the exact same sound as an amplifier, but my gosh, it's really, really close. There's been a plethora of A/B tests over the years of like which one is the real thing and which one's the Kemper. If you watch Andertons at all, or if you watch other channels, they all do the same thing. They just do shootouts between here's the real amp, here's the Kemper. which one do you think is which? And most of the time, they think the Kemper is the real amp, and they think the real amp is the Kemper, or they think it's something else. So it's very fascinating. That's actually why I bought the Wampler Tumnus. Andertons did a 9 or 10 pedal shootout between the real actual silver Klon, and Danish Pete chose the Wampler Tumnus. Out of all the other ones, he said this was the closest to the actual Klon. I was like, well, it's good enough for me. So if you want a Klon, the Wampler Tumnus is a good option for that. But most maulers, have a Klon style pedal in their arsenal. The Quad Cortex Klon is called the Myth Drive because it's mythical, right? So mythical. Nashville and studio guitar players, they're like, I got these amps. I want to capture them, and now I can take them out on tour, and it's a beautiful thing. So I always wanted to get into the studio, like a session guitarist scene. I just never did. That's why I just made my own studio, and I can record all I want, right? But I never did the cartridge. I did an internship at Omni Sound Studios down off of Division Street, downtown Nashville. And, back then they had the cartridge. They had all the big amps, the big rigs. They had all the drums. And nowadays, I just see people walking in with Kempers. I mean, I could see if I was there. Like, I could see him walk in with a Kemper or a Quad Cortex or a Helix or really any modeler that came out within the last, 10 years. Pete Anderson, let me get over here. This is Pete Anderson's Reverend signature model. It's just a classic Tele shape and sound, but it's a Reverend. It's not a Fender. So, but Pete Anderson, he tours and plays live with two Bean Line 6 Pod Bean units. And he does run them through a power amp and then run those into guitar cabs. But he doesn't use a tube amp or he's technically using a mauler, live. He's using the red bean, kidney bean pod units. And he loves the sound. It's just whatever works for you. So the Kemper is mature. Yeah, it's been around. It's been around for a long time. They've had a long time to work out the bugs, and QC has a way to go. So what I want to see on the QC is a proper swell effect, which I kind of got excited because I looked at maybe an older document online, and it said there's supposed to be a swell option in the utility block, but it's just not there. So maybe they said they were going to add it, but then just last minute they probably took it out because it wasn't working or something. I don't know. And hybrid mode, being able to have stomps across the bottom switches and then scenes or presets across the top switches. If they can make it to where spillover was between presets, that'd be pretty sick. I mean, Headrush has been doing that for a very long time. Here's I've been a Headrush guy for many, many years. And this is the baby in the Headrush family. This is the MX-5, which is funny because I often drive past Mazda MX-5s on the road and be like, that's why they named it that, because it's so small. Because those cars are small, very small. But what's cool about the MX-5 is this doesn't pull any punches at all. Whatever rig you make on this, you could put on the big headrush pedal board. You could also put it on the headrush gig board. And the same is true in reverse. If you make a rig on the pedal board, you can put it on the MX5 because these have a quad-core processor, just like the Quad Cortex, mind you. I don't know if these specs are exactly the same, but they're both quad-core processors. So what's cool is when you build a rig on the headrush, let's see if I can plug it in real fast. And then we'll call it quits here. Oh no. May not be able to. Let me get this cable. I'm going to take this cable here. We're going to turn it on. We're going to go out of the headphone jack so we can get some stereo goodness. There we go. Stereo goodness. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Now, the Kemper they do get spillover between their rigs, just like the headrush. So let me make a preset real fast. And we'll add in 11 verb. We'll do a church. We'll turn up the mix. I'm going to save it. And then we're going to save as a new rig. And then turn off the reverb. So that gives me two different rigs here. And I'll put it in rig view so I can see both. Now check this out. So what we're going to do is I'm going to play the first rig. Hear all that reverb? Let me put this on the amp I actually wanted to. Got some noise in these pickups here. I just want a nice clean sound. Okay. Pretty good. All right, hear all that reverb there? Let me go and add a delay just for fun. Echo long. Okay, something like that. All right, so there's our very lush ambient guitar sound, right? Now, you didn't notice, but I just switched to a different rig, and all that delay and reverb kept going. And this is on a $399 piece of gear, right? I switched again. Now let me turn off. Yeah, make sure that that reverb is off here. Let me resave it. Resave it. Okay. And I switched, and it kept going. So that's something that, I messed with the Fractal AX8 today, and it just doesn't do that. And I'm very bummed because the amps sound great. The drives and modulations sound great. And even the reverbs and delays themselves sound great. But when I wanted to spill over from one scene or one preset to the next, it's just a big ordeal to get it all to work. And it's just not worth the extra hassle of using a Fractal to me. I just can't get into the user interface and the architecture of how they have everything laid out. It just doesn't make sense to me. Mark in the mix is asking, what do you think about the Head Rush? I have no opportunity to play or even see one in person. Well, if you go check out my channel, Mark in the mix, then I've counted at least over 100 videos on the Head Rush alone. So if you want to dive in, yeah, Sean is correct. That's why the Head Rush is a sleeper, because it can do some powerful things for not a lot of money. Now, I'm going to do some shootouts with this. Is the models in the Head Rush, let's say, let's just pull up a Princeton reverb real fast. Let's do it. Princeton reverb. And who knows? I might be fooling myself. I might be going down this rabbit trail of like getting all these different maulers and effects units, and realize the Head Rush is just as good as any of them. Who knows? It's yet to be determined, but I still love my Head Rush for sure. All right, so that is the Black Prince reverb. And that's actually the 65, which is just like the capture that was on the Quad Cortex. So once I'm done here, I'm going to do a little setup to where I'm going to have the Head Rush go into a loop of the Quad Cortex. And I'm going to create a scene that has the Quad Cortex capture in one scene. And then I'll swap over to the effects loop that has the Head Rush in it. And I can A/B back and forth pretty fast, the two different sounds. And it'll be interesting to find out, are they close? Like, or are they close enough that, you can't really tell them apart in the mix? I mean, that's really the thing. So, Sean from Kentucky is so right. There's just after using the Head Rush for the last 4 years, wow. It just does it. It does it for me. It hits all the spots. All the spots. Now, I did a live stream last week on my Head Rush monthly stream where I build Head Rush rigs right here in front of you. And last month was about humbucker tones. Sorry, I couldn't talk. But, I mean, I do like me some... Let's see here. Let's go to a higher gain sound just because we can. Like the Lead 800 bass mod. My gosh. It's just... Okay, pretty good. If my pickups didn't sound so weird. Let's go with the classic 30-watt speaker. Okay, it has a sound. Whether we like it or not, that's, it's really up to you, right? You got to take whatever you hear and decide, do I like that tone? And not only by itself, but do you like it in the mix of a song? That's really where it comes down to. For me, when I record with the Head Rush these last 4 years, and then I listen back to it, you can't tell me it's not a real amp in the mix. Because it just sounds really good. It sounds really good. All right. So I broke my promise. I went an hour and 20 minutes. And I was really only going to go an hour, but I'll get better at this, guys. I'll get better at it. I'm going to do this every week. Every Tuesday night, we're going to go live, talk about something. I was going to go a different direction tonight, but I decided let's just go ahead and talk about, because I do need to, this month is going to be the decision-making month. You know, what all am I going to keep? What am I going to sell? You know, headrest, I still got to keep a headrest because, you know, that's just what I do here on the channel. But what other option would I choose if I had to choose something? What would I choose? So that is the decision I got to make. But at the end of the day, we're all about making music here on Doctor McFarland Studios YouTube channel. And I have a studio here up in a detached garage. And I got a drum area. I got my piano area. I got a vocal booth right behind me over here. My Doctor McFarland Studios acoustic panel, custom acoustic panel, which is really cool. And I make music up here. I record bands. I record singers. I just finished a Christmas EP from a friend at church. She sounded great. Her name is Angie Honeycutt, and you should go check out her stuff on Spotify and Tidal. And I think it's still technically uploading. It hasn't officially uploaded yet. I'm going to check it out real fast. I'm sure as soon as it uploads, she'll send me a text saying it finally came out. Yay! But no, it hasn't uploaded officially yet, but it's coming. And I've done country, I've done metal, I've done rock, I've done blues. So really all these items here are just tools for music creation. And it doesn't matter if it's a profile, a capture unit, or a mauler. If you find the sound that you like and it's easy to use, then use it and make music with it. And that's really all that matters. So Mark, I am located south of Nashville in a town called Murfreesboro, but I work in Smyrna off of Sam Ridley at Harrison Consoles. So I'm basically doing music full time. I'm not out gigging and stuff, but I'm working for a console company. I'm making videos. I play all kinds of music all the time, whether it's here in the studio or at church. I help write songs. I do Fiverr gigs. I teach on Thursdays. I have a drum student, 2 guitar students, and a piano student right now. And that kind of switches up every once in a while. But yeah, Mark, I know you're new here, or at least I hadn't seen you on the live stream yet. So if you want to subscribe to the channel, please do that down below and click the bell. I go live every Tuesday for the Tac-O-Bout gear, Tuesday live Q&A type stuff. So I do appreciate you watching along and adding to the conversation here. If not, I'll watch later. I'll click the bell. Yeah, there you go. There you go. He's already way ahead of me. So, I try to make these around the same time every Tuesday, sometime between, it's almost 11 o'clock. Sometime between 8 or 9 o'clock, I try to start. Sometime after the kids go to bed. Mark, I actually graduated high school in Trenton, Georgia, which is there right below Chattanooga. So Chattanooga is a beautiful place. We'd love to live there if it wasn't, if we didn't already have a life here in Middle Tennessee. But Chattanooga is beautiful. It's a great place to live. And we actually went Black Friday shopping there because we were staying with my parents for Thanksgiving. So we had fun doing some Black Friday shopping in Chattanooga. And if I'm down, or if you're ever up here, let's get together and we'll talk shop and maybe do some jamming and maybe go out to lunch or do something. So I love to hang out. So that's all I got. Welcome to the family, Mark. That's right. Any of you guys, if you're here in town, let's get together and let's talk about the good old times of playing music, and let's jam and do whatever you want. We'll have some fun. So, Dade County. Yep. Dade County, Georgia. I graduated high school in 1999. I was born in 1980. So I just turned 42 back here in November. And graduated from Dade County, Georgia. So, there you go, folks. Now you know the rest of the story. All right, I'm going to shut down the stream here. It's just past an hour and 26 minutes. Not a big deal, but try to keep these a little shorter. But anyway, y'all have a great night. I am Doctor McFarland, and I will probably come out with a video on Friday comparing some pedals and the head rush to some captures in the quad cortex. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Keep rocking.